brings us on to our most important segment, one might say, which is the stuff that you guys made, and not a crazy amount of stuff this week, but I'm excited to go through because we got some cool ones. First up, let me check here.
What do we got, Pete? We got new stuff in?
Yeah, I just wanted to grab it. This was the
because
one
it's going to be
Zenfrox I was talking about before.
Because this is going to be a new segment on the YouTubes. For anyone who's just tuning in now, this is a segment where we go over all the cool stuff that's been submitted in either the workshop or our completed works sections on our community Discord server. So obviously we use Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time community Discord for all sorts of communication related to D&D Time, but it's also a place where people can share their own cool homebrew content, and we'll showcase it here and talk about it and be like, hey, look at this cool stuff that our community made. So if you have anything cool you'd like to share, or if you just want to check out all the awesome stuff that other people have shared and be inspired by it, come on down to our Discord. You can get there with dndtime.stream #Discord. We'll bring you right there, and to our website where you can check out, all the other great D&D Time stuff.
And Jeremy, while you've done this, I've gotten the stuff that I need to get in.
Take it away.
So the first one we have tonight is the Penibun, which was created by The Forgotten One. It is a magic item that plays into one of their characters in Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time that they run, but it's also, I think, a reference to the Mario Kart Yellow Mushroom. It's a common consumable. You can, as a bonus action, eat it to double your speed until the start of your next turn. It's a Penibun is, I believe, a type of mushroom. I don't know if penne is the right thing. It's the something bun. Or is it actually penne? I don't know. But
sure either.
I know it's a reference to that type of mushroom, which does have that kind of a
cute, fun reference to a penny bun.
Penny bun, that's what it is.
Fun, cute little reference to the Mario Kart adventure we ran the other week.
Yep, it's cute.
Thank you for sharing, Frog.
Thanks, Frog. The next one was a Griffin stat block here that was made by Zenfrox, which there is a Griffin in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but I think the thing that Zenfrox wanted, because I pre-read this, was it hits a little bit more of like the thing about the Griffin, which is that they are a lion, eagle. They're a lion eagle donkey. So this kind of strikes that. This kind of strikes those chords. Let's talk about this Griffin that Zenfrox put together.
So I'm not going to look specifically at its modifiers or anything, but overall, about 50 hit points. I think the 45 d8s is probably a typo there, but about 50 hit points, about 15 armor class, about 50 speed. That's pretty fast on the ground. Not unreasonable for challenge rating 2 months.
Well, actually, I think that there's a mistake on this Griffin. Zenfrox convention would be, because you wrote 50 feet and then they have a walk speed of 30 feet. The standard convention would be to do the walk speed first and not put walk in front of it. You would just say 30-foot speed, and then you would say 50 foot fly would be the convention on that. And I think that's intention. Let us know if that's...
Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense. 50 feet of fly and 30 feet of land speed makes a lot of sense there. So, I mean, pretty reasonable for challenge rating 2 monster just off the cuff.
Next, they gave him a couple of saving throws, and the bonuses are appropriate for those. They gave him strength and dex, which is fine. They gave him dark vision. You didn't specify on the dark vision what the distance on that is, but in making this stat block exactly correct, you'd want to say dark vision space 60 feet or dark vision 30 feet or whatever it is that you want to give them.
I'd even consider removing the dark vision, just because I'm not sure.
Griffins have dark vision, and
do they
usually? Yeah.
Well, never mind, folks. I don't know anything.
And the passive perception you wrote down as 12, implying that they have proficiency in the perception skill. But if you're going to do that, you probably want to leave a section under the saving throws where it says that they have a +2 to perception.
It also has a cool feature, Winged Fury. The creature gets advantage on attack rolls made while in the air. That's not too... It's very interesting that you put that there. Because I've never seen something like that, but I don't see anything necessarily wrong with it. I guess there's always like the drawback to being in the air, right? Of like you could get knocked out of the air by
Yeah,
a shove action or like something like that. So it's an interesting drawback.
I think that's a cool idea. The thing that I kind of want from that is I want it to have advantage on other creatures that are in the air. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like that seems like the thing that would make sense because it like dive bombing a lot doesn't necessarily seem like something that would give it a tactical advantage, but it just being good at aerial combat, it feels more like, if
Mhm.
it's shredding at people on the air. But let's also talk about, because I think it might play into the next feature too, the way they did the actions. And they gave him this
Interesting.
special ability that's almost kind of like normally
Yeah.
I've never seen anything done like this before. So it's interesting. If the Griffin is on the ground at the beginning of its turn, it can do 2 melee attacks. If the Griffin is in the air at the beginning of its turn, it can do 2 ranged attacks. What I would say instead is it can use its Lion's Claws twice, or it can use its Wind Blast twice. So the
That's a
idea,
convention, but yeah.
yeah, the
Um,
idea being that you can Lion Claw in the air, but if you're flying, you're better at Wing Blast. And you can Wing Blast on the ground, but if you're on the ground, you're better at Lion's Claws. I think that's kind of interesting.
hmm. And along that line, I can see one of the things you did is you made the Wing Blast um, a weaker attack than the Lion's Claws, and I think that's kind of the idea with the Winged Fury, buffing it up a little bit. Um, Mechanically, the normally attack roll and stuff are based on a creature's proficiency bonus, based on the challenge rating and its ability scores. Um,
Like this is functional. Like this is
yeah, it's
absolutely would
functional,
work for a
perfect.
game. But usually, like for example, the Lion's Claws would be based on actually probably both would be based on strength. So they
I
would
could say
both
Wing
just
Blast
have.
being on Dex,
I
but
guess it depends on what I'm picturing. Wing Blast being like you pump your wings really hard and it's like
mhm.
compressed air or something like that.
Oh,
I don't know what Wing Blast was because it's a ranged attack.
yeah, it's
You
also a
picture
little
like
funky that you
feathers.
gave it 3 targets
Oh,
on Wing Blast.
I'm not sure what that would necessarily
Yeah,
mean. Um,
it's just yeah, a little. What I would probably recommend is I'd look at um, there should be a chapter in the monster manual about, or it might be in the Dungeon Master's Guide about creating monsters, and in that it talks about like um, how to calculate the attack bonuses of attacks based on the dexterity or strength of the creature. And yeah, if like the Forgotten One in the chat was saying maybe a cone of 30 feet instead of 3 targets, because the 3 targets is a little confusing. Maybe if you made that into a cone attack for the Wing Blast, that might be another way of handling it.
yeah,
As it stands right now, as a challenge rating 2 monster, I think you would annihilate any level 2 party with this guy,
pretty
just
strong.
because of the way the Wing Blast currently works, the way it's set up here.
And the last thing I want to just point out, the hind legs. If the Griffin is successfully attacked from behind, it receives an attack of opportunity on the creature that hurt it. I love that flavor-wise. Like the donkey
Mm,
legs rear back and kick you. A couple things that I would recommend. One is to make a kick attack for it because
yeah,
it's supposed to be like a
a
melee attack
hoofs.
of them kicking back. So I'd make it an attack to specify like it receives a kick, and you have a kick in the action section for it with a melee of 4, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. For example, if they hit him from behind and then they like wing blast, it doesn't quite work out in that way. It's
One,
also keep in mind that's pretty powerful too.
yeah, well, one of the things that I think you could do here, and this is like a direction I like to do when I'm creating my own creatures that are like a chimera. I mean, I know it's the Griffin, but right, it's a combination of a lot of different creatures together. I think what you could do is you could actually look up the lion stat block in Fifth Edition Dungeons and Dragons, because I'm pretty sure there is a lion stat block. But like you could look up all 3 of those stat blocks and look at what the creatures get in the monster manual, and you could pick and choose and like build your own thing just by stealing those little parts um, from them. But I appreciate that you shared it. I like, compared to the Griffin that's in the monster manual.
Yeah, this one
I
has a
think
lot more
Pete mentioned
flavor.
this earlier, but I do really like that this thing tried to more deeply incorporate the three different like parts of the whole, right? It's got the lion's claws, it's got the eagle's wings, it's got the donkey's legs. And the current Griffin doesn't actually really do that super well.
Yeah,
so
it just kind of has the claw
that.
attack. So yeah, I like that as well. I think it's a really cool direction to take. A long time ago, I wanted to share. A guy had been going through and trying to make all of the beasts in the
Horse. Apologies.
Horse legs. Yeah, my apologies. Things like cats. He'd been trying to make better stat blocks for them and give them really complicated mechanics for things like if you have a pet cat, you want your cat to always land on its legs and stuff like that. Like the things that define the animals. And this is kind of like, I think your mind was in a similar space of wanting to flesh this out. So I like it. Thanks very much for sharing, Zenfrox.
Yeah, thank you. Let's talk about this next guy. What's this next guy, Pete?
This is the Circle of Mutation Druid by Zachary Golden, was the name of the person who made it. Frog shared this. He found it on GM Binder. And it's just one that he liked and wanted us to take a look at and see what we thought of it and the design. So we can, take a good look. I don't know how deep we'll go into it. And there's definitely, I read through it a bit, and there's a lot of hidden rule. There are a lot of hidden rules in this thing because it makes reference to a lot of monsters that would have to be analyzed in order to really properly evaluate this. But I thought we could at least kind of brush over it and give some first thoughts.
Yeah, so I guess the whole point of this, right, is we're going to be dealing with monstrosities. Monstrosities being warped and mutated versions of beasts in the world. They are able to live and reproduce and exist in the world on their own, but they aren't of a natural origin. So
we have here the first ability is you get a monstrous wild shape. So you get an alternative use of your wild shape, and you can gain one of the following things: a manticore tail, which is a natural weapon with a range of 30 to 60 feet, and that you are proficient in and uses your wisdom modifier when rolling to hit. That's an interesting choice. When you hit with attack, it deals 1d6 plus your wisdom modifier piercing damage. Barring the kind of the flavor doesn't work for me on becoming a manticore, but using your druid wisdom to use the tail spike attack. So I think there's a better way to implement it, but the idea of getting a manticore's tail and doing this kind of monstrosity stuff, does that work for you, Jeremy?
I feel like if I'm going full mutations, I'm not sure. I need to really think about it a little bit more. Let's look at these next guys.
Owlbear, the next feature?
Yeah, Owlbear's mantle. Your arms and shoulders become covered in thick hide and feathers, giving you a natural armor of 13 plus your dex modifier. And your fingertips sprout large bear-like claws that are natural weapons that reach 5 feet. Proficient in and use wisdom modifier when rolling to hit, and they deal 1d6 plus your slashing modifier, slashing damage. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting where these are going for, and you get one of the following benefits. Yeah, in Warg's Jaws, your head becomes that of a warg. You're gonna reach 5 feet. Whenever you hit, it deals a d8 plus your wisdom modifier damage. And you can knock creatures prone if they're your size or smaller when you bite them with the Warg's Jaws. I get where this is coming from, but I think that this is maybe a...
The execution on this doesn't hit the ideal that it seems to be reaching for me.
Yeah, I agree. You get one little part of these classic monstrosities in 5th edition D&D, but even beyond that, this doesn't excite me, I guess, is the key. And that's going to our rubric, which of course I've closed like a fool. But the core, and I think most important direction to start with on the rubric is the flavor. Does this inspire you? And this doesn't right now. I love owlbears. I love them a lot. But I don't know how I would make a owlbear thing that did this, right? That would inspire me.
I was hoping you just sort of had these things and we're just walking around a horrifying monster at all times. These are a wild shape thing.
That would be pretty whack.
And also kind of one other problematic thing with this is you become this kind of creature and then you're a melee druid, but without the benefits of the moon druid, for example, being a melee druid, which is a big extra pool of hit points. So you're kind of not designed to get up and battle really close. And then this doesn't really seem like it gives you enough tools to make up for that deficit.
Mm-hmm.
is another quick thought. 6th level, you gain
Yeah,
magic.
damn, your attacks are magic.
Makes sense. And then at 10th level, it's kind of taking a page out of the whatchamacallit book, the Moon book, and giving you more powerful things to wild shape into. And they have a list of them here.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I was talking about in terms of not having, like, I don't want to read all these races right now to really find out what the balance is, but my instinct is that they're probably okay for the most part on 2 wild shapes. Like a bullet, it sounds bad to me in my mind.
You see, there are some issues here that, like, I feel that you're not going to necessarily know. Like, for example, the hook horror, it is a monstrosity that has blind sight. It's got 120 feet of dark vision. Like, it has echolocation. It's got these really whack features that you don't really think about.
You're looking at health and armor class and damage and not considering the utility of some of these, I think.
Yeah, and they're probably in a similar page because of that. But, like, the direction I think anyone would want to take with this is, well, what if they come out with a new cool monstrosity? Can I not be that because this is a specific list? Like, it's too broad that you can't just say monstrosity is a challenge rating X or lower, because otherwise then you get Medusas in there, and, like, you can't help player character be a Medusa. You just can't.
Everybody was pointing out you get temporary hit points here, and Spore Druid does this as well. Let's look at, for example, when you get its temporary hit points equal to level, I think referring to the previous feature.
Yeah.
Temporary hit points equal to the level, and I mean, through the levels of play that are most common, 1 through 10, 10 temporary hit points I don't think is enough to carry this form. If it's at especially not at 10th level,
Yeah.
It's kind of trivial. And also, I don't actually like Spore Druid all that much, so...
Yeah, I mean, I think Spore Druid is kind of bad design, but even then, and I also noticed there's no action economy associated with this. You just you gain the ability to transform into unnatural forms.
It seems implied that it's the same as
Wild Shape. Yeah.
Let's talk improved mutations as the capstone here. Monsters Wild Shape
3 times your level. Okay, so you get more temp hit points.
More temp hit points there. Manticore kinship. So it improves these forms, and that's also so it looks like all of these improve the forms that you already have. And the issue with that design is because you're getting better versions of the first level ones and then taxing the same resource that you're taxing in for your 10th level feature. So this feature kind of invalidates your whole 10th level feature in a lot of ways. Like, everything ties into this one resource.
Yeah, it's a lot of competing designs, right? I think there maybe is a direction that could be gone with these monstrosity wild shapes down here. There maybe is a direction that could be gone with these. You get some cool parts and you're still you, but you can do these cool things. I'm just not sure this quite does it for me. It's neat, and I'm sure a home game's great, but...
Yeah. Farfel was saying, I want to be a horrific Chimera monster at all times without being a Simic hybrid, and I feel like Druid might be the best way to accomplish this, but I don't feel like making it. It's, it's not... I can kind of see that. The idea here of Druid is probably the place to do monstrosities if you're going to do it. Like, the dark side of nature, in a lot of ways, is what monstrosities have always felt like to me. And so I can definitely see he picked the right class, and I think there is... If we're looking at this on the charts, I think that
there's space for it for sure.
A space. They would get the space point because I think this works where it is. I
think it lacks the others.
Yeah, probably, but that's that.
Yeah, I think Frog, you nailed it. The concept is great. Mechanics about it, not so much. And it's not that everything in here is bad. I think there's actually some cool ideas in here.
Yeah, it's just it could be taken.
Yeah, it just needs a little bit more to it. Let's look over these next guy. What's this next one, Pete?
The Chirrupits, race option by Cherry. I don't know if they're hanging out still. Farazia's in chat. If you are, speak up, because I know there's a lot going on here, and some of it I needed clarification from them on what some did.
Oh my, there's lots of stuff here.
Yes, so we'll skip over the flavor, but to summarize, these are bat creatures. And they have
Oh,
I know a lot of the times it's a little bit. Are you familiar with
no, Frog was just saying it in chat.
Charactics? I don't know if this is a.
Yeah, I've got no clue. But it is within the caverns of old and deep, within the Underdark, the sound of flapping wings, the smell of mushrooms, along with an elegant screech. The drow fear them, and if you are ever lost, seek help from them. They are the only sliver of warmth and kindness you'll ever find within the deep and cold caverns of the Underdark. They love sweet things as well as stories.
Oh,
I like that. I think that's actually a really nice,
that's not what I was expecting, and I really like that as well.
And it gives a little bit about how, Bat beings were the first ones to settle, molded by its darkness, but not twisted by the evil that the Underdark had not yet grown to embody. I like that too. Really nice, giving them a home in the world and a context to them.
And a home that is setting agnostic. You could fit this into any campaign that's ever going to run the Underdark. It doesn't matter what your Underdark is. These could work in that as just like a.
They're just an old race.
Yeah, they're just an old race. But I'd like to, if you're down, I'd like to skip right to some of the mechanics on this.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, just before we skip past real quick, I like the idea, right, that it's they lived with myconids, feeding mostly on small mushrooms, right? It gives you a lot of idea toward, how these could interact with other monsters in the Underdark, which for a dungeon master, really cool, because it gives you some context for using these guys in your games. And as a player, it gives you something to play off of oh, I have this affinity towards mushrooms, right? I'm more at home under the dark, in the darkness or underground. I like that. I think there's some very cool additions to have in there. And of course, the basics like having, age and all of that are cool.
It was nicely done on all of the flavor of these, and I could see myself even I could see myself running these and stealing this idea and putting these in one of my games for sure, because I really like the idea of these bat boys. But let's start looking at some mechanics. The ability score increase, they get a +2 to Dex and a +1 to Wiz. Not controversial there. -2 to Intelligence, which is true.
I would recommend against that.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, it can just be very, very punishing for some players. It's kind of like, why can't I play an Orc Wizard, right? Why can't I play a Corrupted
Barbarian?
Yeah, a Corrupted Wizard.
I mean, if there's ever one that made sense, the Kobold Barbarian kind of is, but...
Yeah, well, a little bit. But I guess I would recommend against having that if you can help it. Yeah. Movement, 20 feet of walking, that's very slow. But they have a fly speed of 60, and you give them a climb speed of 60. It's a very fast climb speed. I would maybe recommend keeping the climb speed at 20, just like their walking speed.
Usually, because usually speaking, the climb speed can't be higher than the walking speed. Because the idea is, climb just is telling you how much you can climb out of your speed. How much, does climbing reduce your movement? Because then you could climb on the ground, technically speaking, so it would amount to the same thing.
But yeah, and I would consider maybe taking these to the 25 foot, like a small creature, if you can help it. Although these medium creatures is what you're putting these guys at, and I guess that makes sense. They're not great walkers because they're bats.
Especially if you're giving them a 60-foot fly speed, which is a really big feature.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting. You have effectively given them blindness. They can only set to 10 feet, which is interesting. You give them an echolocation feature as a kind of surrogate to that. Like we were talking about in the last thing with the monstrosities druid, I'd look at echolocation as it is as a stat on monsters like the Hook Horror, because echolocation, right? You can see in that distance while you're not deafened, and I think that needs to be on here, just as you can see as long as you're not deaf.
Yep,
kind of vibe.
And he gave him 120 feet of that blind sight, because I think it works as blind sight for bats too, doesn't it? Usually. Yeah,
that
it's something that it's an interesting concept.
Much, I think
it's a really powerful to give them blind sight, but also it's like if there was ever a race I would forgive it on, it would be the bat people.
I agree.
So I'm kind of into that, but you'd really need to think about how that's going to shake out. Sleepless, you can sleep anywhere, even upside down. I like that.
It's very cute.
Can also sleep during a short rest. Once you sleep on the third short rest, it'll be considered a long rest. So it's reducing rest time for them. And while they're sleeping, so they're kind of giving them basically, I think looking at the meditation feature from the elves might be a good reference for this.
Yeah.
Because it seems like you want to do a similar thing here.
The key for like really nailing homebrew, because I think there's some really great ideas so far, but excuse me, I think one of the best things to do is know if you know of an example that does something similar that you want, just take it, right? Like, like the bat is a creature in the monster manual. So, or it's even in the back of the player's handbook. So open up the bat and be like, got 60 feet of blind sight, putting that right on. It's got echolocation, putting that right on, right? Being able to just, because it saves you all the effort of having to worry about the phrasing and the text and the balance of it, even to a large degree, if it's already on there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Always borrow as much as you can from existing resources.
Yeah, exactly. It's
down to the text.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to. Overwhelming dexterity.
Can have up to a 22 dexterity.
Yeah, I think that probably should not be on there. I get like your idea, they're very fast and they're agile, but that's just not really how 5th edition D&D works.
Yeah.
Especially as a race option.
I was actually putting together a large creature, and I was considering doing that with strength because it was something that made so much for a large creature. But even then, I was like, I don't know if this could be done and be balanced in anything but a home game.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily unbalanced. It's just...
It doesn't work in the greater context of Dungeons and Dragons, but it might work for your game.
Yeah. I guess, is it an important enough feature to be worth making a radical departure from the core rules of the game? Which are the core rules are you can't have higher than a 20 in your stat. And, for the 20th level barbarian that gets, a 24 strength, that's your 20th level feature. That is a good enough reason to take a departure from it. You're a bat, so you're fast. Might not be a powerful enough reason to take that kind of a departure from those core rules.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is. I don't know.
Consider it. Flying, cannot fly. We can fly while carrying a heavy object, but not while wearing armor. They have a -2 to all strength rolls while wearing heavy armor. I feel like you don't need that. I feel like you could just say they just can't fly while they're wearing it, and I feel like that's enough. But you can carry an object up to 5 times your own weight. There are actually rules, unless you want that specifically.
Well, what's interesting is that 5 times your own weight is the base encumbrance rule in 5th edition D&D.
Yeah.
So that's actually a rule that's already there.
So you probably don't need that in there because it's just kind of...
Yep.
That's kind of thing. And you gain advantage on wisdom rolls. Wisdom of Old.
Cool name for a feature.
Agreed. It's way too good because I don't know if you mean all wisdom saving throws and wisdom attack rolls and wisdom ability checks. But if that's the case, then that's way too good. Even advantage on a single wisdom based skill is probably a little bit too powerful, especially with all the other stuff that this can do, i.e. flying speed and the blind sight and stuff like that, which you haven't put blind sight, but I think it's implied that you have blind sight.
Yeah, I think what might be a more, because I mean, it's just wisdom saving, saving throws are so powerful in the game. The gnome subclass, that's the only thing subrace, the only thing they get is
advantage on wisdom saving throws.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that might be a little too powerful. What might be cool is if you gave them, for example, a proficiency with a survival check or a nature check or a history check or something like that. They have proficiency with these specific skills.
Oh, history feels so cool to me for Wisdom of Old.
Yeah, and I think that would be a cool way of
And you could rephrase it to knowledge of old, so you don't.
Even Wisdom of Old works perfectly fine for it. I think. Right?
I agree.
Yeah, I think Wisdom of Old is such a good name. There's no reason to change it.
Yeah.
I would say probably maybe an ability check, or if it had to be wisdom saving throws, I think you could have it be just wisdom saving throws. but
That's
that would be
really,
if assuming that none of these subclasses existed. That was just with the current stats we're
and it
looking
would be
at
kind of
there.
pushing it. Um,
And this is
uh,
where things get
yeah.
very strong here.
I don't know if we're gonna have time to go over all of these in too much detail, but one thing I'm seeing that they all have is an extra stat boost on them. For example, the Night Terror here has an extra +3 to strength. There's the Blood Gorger and the Blight Screecher. It's got a +2 to Con and Wisdom, respectively. These are all really big buffs. Traditionally speaking, almost every subclass follows the convention of they get +2 to one thing and +1 to another. And I think your thinking is that by removing intelligence, it kind of opens up room to gives you back points. But that's not generally speaking the case. Especially a +3 is something you can almost never do.
Getting a strength is always better than adding a weakness. So like, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. The weakness gained from losing 2 intelligence is nowhere near as big of a detriment as gaining a +3 strength is a bonus.
Or like, even a +2 strength.
Yeah, I mean, or even a +1 strength even. Like that's just a lot of extra power in getting these extra ability scores. I think since you had a +2 dex and a +1 wisdom, if you dropped that +2 int and it was just a +1 strength here, so you get an overall +4 to stats, you could maybe work with that. That maybe is something workable.
It would get it at least kind of closer in the territory instead. And then we're already at a point, I would say, with this where we're kind of having balance issues where this has got the flight and the echolocation and the wisdom save and
it's just got
these
a
extra
lot.
stats, and now attacking these extra like kind of complicated features here with like this gives you extra intimidation and this cool like grapple pouncing feature, and it makes it so you can get a 22 strength instead of the 22 dex, and
it's just a little much. It does a little too much for what 5th edition D&D typically does with its race options.
With a race,
yeah. And I think we get a similar idea everywhere, right? We get the Blood Gorger. They can do bloodletting. They can make an attack to grab and bite a creature, and it does extra damage and heals you if you hit with it. And there are a limit on it, right? You can do it a number of times equal to your con modifier, but it's just that in its own right alone is almost enough like to be like a race option. Forget about being a sub race to something that already can fly and do all sorts of stuff. One of the things you could do to maybe give a little more room for these sub races, if you really were insistent and wanted to keep them, is you could potentially give maybe reduce that fly speed down to 30, like the bat actually is 30. It's not particularly fast. And that frees up a little more room, but a fly speed is still very strong.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
But
overall, though,
I think this is moving in a really cool. I think this is moving in a really cool direction, and I'd like to see if you end up doing more work on it and getting it down a little bit. Also, I'd really recommend because a lot of the times, if I'm being honest, it's you have a lot of cool ideas, and I have trouble kind of like parsing some of them because the way you lay things out. We have really cool layouts for a lot of the stuff that Jeremy put together, which are linked in the Discord. Well, it's on from the lab, and it'll just kind of like allow you to format stuff, and all of it's kind of already out there. Things like, is the race option one that you made a while ago on that list, Jeremy, or is it just the all-purpose one that you have?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. I'll have to check.
Regardless, there's cool stuff on that you could check out and get some better formatting stuff for it there. But
yeah, at least a little easier to follow. But overall, really cool idea. I can tell you were really inspired by these guys. Yeah. And I just it takes it's that balance part that needs to be woven in a little bit. The balance and maybe the design. Right? We need to have a little bit more concise, especially with the Night Terror. It's a lot about you gain a -2 to every charisma roll, except an intimidation where you gain a +1. It's just a lot all at once. A lot of kind of nuanced, specific rules.
Brevity is the soul of wit, as they say.
I like it, and thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jerry.
Cherry indeed.
I'm sorry, Cherry on Discord.
I was gonna say Rosia on Twitch, Cherry on Discord, but
let's talk about this this next thing from Zenfrox, Rock and Roll.
Yes, I have not looked at this. This is a 4th level, I think, Bard spell specifically.
Excellent.
It is a
anything with 2 actions casting
Interesting.
Time. Holy moly!
Range and area 70 feet, and it's a 6-foot sphere. And it's a Constitution saving throw and deals bludgeoning damage. Whoa! There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of intriguing things that you've hit me with in the first half of this. With the power of music and the elements, you can create a large rock from the ground and send it barreling towards your enemies. If the enemies are hit, they take 6d12 plus 5 damage. If the enemies succeed the con saving throw, they take 3d6 plus 2 damage. The more powerful your music, the larger the rock you can conjure. All right. I mean, it's hilarious. You make a big rock and you roll it at them.
I think the idea you were going for here is that it's a 70-foot range and the rock is 6 feet and rolls the whole 70 feet, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Which that's not. That's how I interpret it as well, at least. Which that's not how I would usually go about, or not how 5e the convention would go about phrasing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a great spell to look at for something like this would be the Tidal Wave spell, which is an area of effect that moves. And I don't know how it's been done before, but there is a way to do that.
Yeah,
just because it's not clear in the ranged area.
Or another one is what's it called? Cloud Kill. Cloud Kill is a spell, which creates a thing that moves with you. Or on subsequent turns. I think the balance of this is actually not terrible.
Yeah, it's not far off.
16-12. I would take the +5 off there because I don't understand where that came from.
Likewise,
also, typically,
if the enemy succeeds on the Constitution saving throw, instead of saying 3d6 plus 2, you would just probably want to say they take half damage.
Yeah. Also, 6-foot area is a little weird. Typically, 5th edition D&D goes in 5-foot increments, so 6 is just a little. I'm not sure I quite get it, but overall, it's fun. Like,
it's goofy.
I get it.
One other thing I would consider, I kind of want this.
Dirt or rock.
Actually, 2 things. I want this to knock people over.
Yeah,
was my instinct. And 2, a strength or a dexterity saving throw would make more sense to me than a con saving throw. Because you're getting hit with a thing, so it's either like you're trying to like push it away or dodging out of the way. But Constitution is usually like an internal save, like your ability to resist poison and stuff. So it would make more sense to me if it was one of those 2 saves. But
yeah, strength or dex.
Oh wait, also one more thing. Why casting time 2 actions? I don't think it. You were thinking when you were talking about balance, you were just thinking 1 action, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think this could be 1 action.
Yeah, I don't think you need to make this
a lot actually for this, but
it's high.
Number D12s, whatever. That's just.
Yeah, I think you're better off bringing the damage down than making it 2 turns because it's definitely it's too much to do 2 turns to do this. Also, it's kind of.
Well, the problem is it feels bad.
Yeah.
And that adds a lot. It brings up new questions, right? Where it's like, all right, well, if I'm 1 turn in and then I'm knocked unconscious, did I use my spell slot?
There's a lot of stuff there.
D&D doesn't really have a framework for spells that take more than 1 action. So I would recommend against those if you can help it. Also, hello, Diadems. I've seen you join us in the chat.
Welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just said hi to Farful. Oh, no, you said hi, Pete and Jeremy.
Too. I just see it. Hi, Pete and Jeremy. And then there's a last sentence here. The more powerful your music, the larger the rock you can conjure. I don't know if that's just meant to be flavor, but if you want to do a higher level cast thing for it, you should check out the higher level cast on some other spells and do that.
You know what I will say, though, in terms of space, and this is something actually really interesting because 5th edition D&D doesn't have a lot of space for spells. Like, there are a lot of spells in 5e already that can fulfill a lot of, wizard or spellcast fantasies already.
There's space for this.
This is interesting because, you conjure a boulder that rolls down an area. That is such a classic thing, right? Indiana Jones runs from the boulder, right? That's so classic. That's the glyph of warding that starts the boulder trap in the dungeon. why is this not already exist in some form or another, right? This is like, I think this is a really cool one that you've realized there is space for in the game, and I really appreciate that you started to put that together.
And like the name rock and roll, it's a pun, but like I could picture Wizards making something like this if they called it like Rolling Rock, or well, I guess that's a brand. It's hard to find a Rolling Rock thing without hitting something that's branded. I was going to say Rolling Stone, but that's also a brand. But I bet you they could find like Tumbling Boulder or something that would. I could just see this being the kind of thing Wizards would make it, but
could call it Boulder Dash or whatever.
Balling
and
Boulder.
I could see the little component being for it, like it'd probably be one of the first thematic components, like a little ditty. It's got to sing something.
Yeah, that would. Material component is a song.
Yeah, I think we're material component though.
I know.
Anyway,
I thought that was funny. All right.
Thank you very much.
Oh wait,
a musical instrument would be the material component.
I forgot about this, Jeremy, because it wasn't on the list. I should have written it down. But do you have the Murder Dolly open?
I do.
This is you just couldn't put it on our list because it was
it's a PDF,
which is nice because it looks very nice.
Thank you so much.
Easily, yeah.
We really prefer either Google Docs or PDFs.
This is the Murder Dolly. This was made by Frog. Giants Sword Cool here highlighted their message Giants Bowling Ball. It's pretty good too. A huge, oh wow, this is a huge creature. I did not expect that. I read this through earlier, but I think I just kind of brushed over that in my mind.
Oh, it's like a giant doll? Oh, Jesus.
Neutral evil. Let's begin working our way through. Actually, do you want to read the flavor of it first?
Well, just as a quick glance at stats, huge creature. It looks like you've got, even the hit point calculations seem correct. So power to you. A lot of people don't get those right. Reasonable. I mean, your challenge rating 5, hit points and armor class seem pretty on point. Damage immunities, thunder.
Stats all
That's an interesting one. Poison I totally get. Damage resistances that aren't silvered. I would probably just say adamantine, but I guess you could put silvered on there. Yeah, I mean, this seemed pretty reasonable. It's kind of weird that you put a stun qualifier on the condition immunity. But overall, I mean, it seems pretty reasonable just on its base stats. Yeah, let's look at these. Let's look at these guys, and then we'll come back to the abilities.
So Murder Dollies appear as comically exaggerated dolls with their head taking a third or so of their total height. They stand at about 18 feet tall, wield 2 oversized weapons in each hands, a great club and a crudely made weapon, dubbed a murder axe by those who survived. It looks like several pieces of metal forged onto a pole by force. A Murder Dolly's cosmetic features differ between individuals, as it's normally due to their taste of their creator, but they all tend to have 2 eyes that share no common design, a mouth full of sharp, almost shark-like teeth, and clothing that dismisses the threat of their true intent.
Mysterious origins. Well, it's obvious that they are constructed by means of magic. No records exist for who originally created them. Only a single widespread rumor that has some sort of explanation. An evil mage decided to create a greater type of flesh golem, but with an entirely different method. Using several corpses of villagers they raided the day before, they proceeded to combine methods with ritual for creating homunculi, initial transmuting flesh into magical fluff. When he succeeded in creating the first of the Murder Dollies, he failed to control such and was promptly eaten. Other rumors suggest the appearance of Murder Dollies was because the first Murder Dolly gained enough intelligence, knowledge, and magic from consuming its creator to create followers.
Okay, so this was kind of explaining some of the thunder resistance and stuff like that. Is that this is a?
I see, because you took some flesh golem stuff.
A flesh golem reference, yeah.
Still don't think flesh golems are immune to thunder, though. I'm not sure.
I think they have a mega immunity where they heal from. Oh, not thunder. They heal from
lightning. Yeah, I'm not sure I get the thunder.
Maybe. Encountering a collection, Murder Dollies normally hunt living creatures alone, but in areas where tougher objectives exist, many form temporary parties called a collection. A Murder Dolly collection is something to be feared. It has at least 4 to 5 and can wipe out an outlying village in a small amount of time. record numbers is 40 for full-scale city invasions. There's something very Attack on Titan, like a twisted kind of fairy tale Attack on Titan, where there's a bunch of angry dolls that are eating people. Best advice when getting ready to face the collection is don't do it.
And for if you've ever seen it, even if you survive the horrors that wait with him, the dollhouse is supposedly where the first murder dolly, so nearby adventurers who survived from the sound of its laughter, as well as numerous kin reside. The dollhouse moves around on several tree trunk-like stilts when it is time to be relocated until the hunt may continue. All right, this is pretty whack in like a concerning kind of way. A very scary murder dolly. Bubonic One is saying, is thunder damage force damage? No, they're actually two distinctly different things. Force damage is kind of, it's a weird ambiguity, but basically it is raw magical damage. It does not push, it does not move. It's just the damage of magic, like
energy
breaking. It's kind of like atomic damage, right? Like radiation almost.
I always picture, I always picture just like kinetic energy. If you could just remove that from an object and use it, that would be what force damage was.
Yeah, it is raw energy damage. It's a kind of weird concept.
Farfel 13, Captain Marvel does force. See, I would argue that Captain Marvel did radiant damage. But this is neither here nor there. The Murder Dolly has aversion to fire, so if it takes fire damage, it has disadvantage on checks. That's cool. I love... Everyone do that. Put those kind of things on your monsters. I love monsters that have weaknesses that your players can figure out and then start to exploit. It makes combat way more interesting and way more fun, especially for the player who figures it out. When it's like, if I burn, the dollies burn, so I can use my cool fire spells, and that's really helpful for the battle. It adds an extra layer of depth.
Yeah, and the magic resistance is pretty standard for the flesh golem, which clearly is what this is sort of based on. And then super soft body. The murder dolly is immune to non-magical weapon attacks that would deal bludgeoning damage except on a critical hit. Additionally, any attempts to grapple the murder dolly are at advantage and treated as one size category smaller. I get what you're going for here. That's a little weird. I don't know. I kind of get the idea.
I feel like you don't need the except on a critical hit thing. I think you can just give them immunity to non-magical bludgeoning.
Yeah, I think you could do that. I think that's a good idea.
And then I kind of like the second thing. Like if someone tries to go up and grapple the dolly, they realize they can. I think that's kind of cool. But I just don't think you need the first part.
Yeah, I think, and this happens a lot. I see is getting too into the weeds of it, right? You're getting too deep into the weeds of it. You can just give them immunity to non-magical bludgeoning. That is a-okay. As someone like designing a monster, it's all right to do that if it's appropriate for the monster. And in this case, I think it's fair to do that. You don't need to worry about the uncritical hit stuff. Let's see, 2 attacks. Oh goodness, they hit like a truck. They hit like a truck.
They have 2 attacks, +8 to hit, 17, 3d8 plus 4 bludgeoning, and 23, 3d12 plus 4. And then when they crit, oh my god, they deal 40 slashing damage to the target. That is probably too good for a CR5 monster, because that's the kind of thing where it's like, even though it's only on a 19 or 20, so if you did out the math, even if that math works out right, there are some encounters that are just going to be unfun because the wizard takes 1 hit from a murder axe and then is out of the game and may be dead completely.
Yeah, I get the vibe you're going for. Oh, it's the murder axe. It murders. But at the same time, it sucks when that happens. And I realize 40 damage is actually less than the average, or pretty much on point with the average damage of the attack on a crit.
Wait a minute. Okay, I was thinking that was an addition.
No, I don't think so. But I guess the point I'm getting at is like, that's kind of like getting into the weeds of it a little bit, right? Because it's saying is instead of doing critical damage, it does average damage, so you don't just auto kill them. But
oh, okay. I thought that
yeah,
was like an extra 40 on top. It's like you super kill them. I misread.
no, I mean, I think the deal here is, this is a cool creature, but it's a little overtuned for a CR5, especially when you compare it directly to the Flesh Golem. The Flesh Golem has that lightning absorption, which is the one thing that Flesh Golem has on this. But this guy's got a 5-point higher armor class. He's got 9 fewer hit points, which isn't really that big a deal. He's faster. He does more damage on both of his attacks by a pretty large margin with a higher to hit. Yeah, I think it's just a teeny bit overtuned.
For a CR5.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe tune it down a little bit. Like the +8 to hit here, if we base that on its strength, which is a 19, should be 4 plus the proficiency bonus, which is 3 for a CR5 creature. So it should be +7, unless these are magical Great Club and Murder Axes, which
wouldn't be specified elsewhere, but
yeah. But just something
but maybe
to consider.
CR7. Honestly, that actually sounds pretty good to me. But
yeah, I mean, at a CR7, that maybe is more reasonable. I don't really think I could argue with that at CR7.
Yeah, there's
But
math that has to be done to know if that's exactly
challenge
true.
rating is all minutia anyway. It's a cool creature. I'm really glad you shared it.
I agree. Also, it came out really nice. I love the art. That's Frog's own art for anyone unfamiliar with it.
Yeah.
He drew his own murder dolly to go along with the monster. And
I like the little
it's a well
skull
together-
necklace.
I do too.
I
It's well put
imagine that's like
together,
a real skull.
Oh no.
That's how big the murder dolly is.
And with that, I think we're gonna move on to our final, regardless. I was gonna say third and final for some reason. Our last item tonight is the Fisheye Lens, an item created by Sword, which is a pair of goggles with the appearance of fish eyes. It's a rare item, requires attunement. It's cursed, he says. While wearing these goggles, you can see clearly even the murkiest and darkest of water and gain the ability to breathe underwater. However, the cursed nature of this item gives the player the appearance, language, and all of the abilities of Kuo-toa, but the effect will not disappear until dawnlight breaks the curse. So basically, this is a pair of goggles that turns you into a Kuo-toa.
So wait a minute. While you wear the goggles,
you can breathe underwater. And
you turn into a Kuo-toa.
Yes, while you wear the
Not
goggles.
when you're attuned to the item. So is the idea that like you're just you for most of the adventure, and then when you need to, you flip them down and turn into a Kuo-toa, and then you're stuck as a Kuo-toa? Because I actually kind of really like that, like a lot.
That is pretty cool. This is the kind of thing that you'd never see printed in Wizards, but you would see in a campaign, and everyone would remember the time that the person wore the fish goggles and got turned into a Kuo-toa, and that was righteous.
Yes, absolutely. I very much like this.
Agreed.
Thank you very much for sharing, Sword.
Thanks, Sword.
And with that, Pete, you know what time it is?
Ask me, Pete and Jeremy.
It's a Pete and Jeremy time. This is where you guys can ask us questions. Hopefully, you've already asked us questions in our Discord lobby, and we will do our best to answer them.
Yeah, we got a few here. First one is from Flipknot Riversong Whooper Will.
Flipknot?
Wait, that's why.
Flipnote.
Flipknot. I've been saying Flipknot Riversong the whole time. I've never read that E. I apologize so much.
Tisk, Pete.
Flipnote. I've been hearing Flipknot Riversong. Have you ever considered expanding the undead option to the homebrew races that you have on D&D Time? No, I haven't. I don't know if you have. I know you designed the undead originally, Jeremy.
I mean, it'd be really cool.
When I say that, I don't mean to say
Yeah.
it's a bad idea. I just hadn't considered it.
Yeah, I think the real reason is when I made the undead options, I really wanted to just cover the core races in the player's handbook. The intent wasn't to make it really a D&D Time specific thing. Like some of the other stuff we created, like the Trash Druid was very much, we made this for D&D Time, a thing. But the undead race options I made with the intent of that, I mean, anyone could take those and play them in any game. And you're right, there's some D&D Time specific lore in there, but I don't think there's anything in those stat blocks that would be unreasonable to use in any of your own adventures. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd ever expand them for the other D&D time races. It's just a lot, right? I don't want to put myself in a hole where it's like people expect me to make a new undead every time we make a new thing. So maybe, soft maybe.
There it is. Next question from V Bunny: is there any magic item you can think of that lets you disguise yourself or change shape to represent another creature physically? Oh, I think I actually you added me with this question, and I said the Hat of Disguise was the one that I came up with.
I'm sure there are some others.
Yeah,
like a wand of polymorph, I guess technically.
Yeah, it would be in that category. I don't know if there's one.
You could argue that what is it, urn of genie summoning or a Frady summoning or whatever it is.
Oh, lol.
You could use that and then wish, assuming you got the one with the Frady gives you a wish to look like someone else.
Or a scroll of wish or a luck blade.
Yeah, those would be options too. Well, I like the convolution though of using the
ring of genie, so hoping you
get the Frady bottle. That's what it's called.
The Frady bottle, yes. Will Wildemount content ever be available for D&D time, and if so, when? Maybe me and Jeremy both read the Wildemount content. We haven't had a moment to sit down and really discuss and make a decide in the context of D&D time. But we'll try and, now that we've been reminded to do that by this question, we'll try and get that done. Because we can.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about Wildemount, Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, there are a bunch of new spells, and there are the three main subclass options. I don't know if there's anything really else in it besides that. So, yeah, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
Like Pete and I had mentioned, we had some issues with at least one of the subclasses at a relatively early level feature, so I'm not sure.
We'll have to wait and see, but we'll try and make a decision either way on that relatively quickly. We'll look at those as well after.
Medimorgs asks, if each of you had to choose two numbers between 1 and 8, and you couldn't share a similar number, what would they be?
I call 4.
I'm going to take 2.
Why don't you pick the second one, because I got first
6.
4 and 5.
Ooh, good choices. I like that.
I like yours.
Those are two strong choices, Pete.
I liked yours as well. 6.
We'll try not to read into that one too much.
6 would have been my second choice. But next question. So question: how does one regulate what characters? This is a great question. How does one character regulate what character knows or doesn't know? You could say no metagaming, but then what is that? Wouldn't characters who live in a living, breathing world justifiably know some of what the strongest creatures are out of fear and storytelling? For example, what gods exist and possibly what those gods look like, and that liches are humanoids who control undead? What about something like a story rhyme about how trolls hate fire?
Yeah, so the answer to that question, I'm sorry, Pete, did you have something you wanted to answer on it?
You can go first. I'll have something to say too.
The answer to that question is just being respectful to your DMing other players, right? If the other players are really into the idea of discovering it, or if they don't know yet, right, because they're maybe newer to the game, not putting that stuff out there, even though you as a player know it, is just a cool way to go about it, right? Let them discover the cool thing themselves, even if it means going into it in a less advantageous position. Similarly, for something like move in the DM, right? Like, if you can tell that you're playing in a game where the DM is not super into you being like, okay, yeah, just talk about everything every time, then maybe just don't. But at the same time, I've played and run in games. I've run and played in games where the DM really likes that stuff, right? Players coming up with these story reasons as to why they might know something. I think it's a really, really cool idea, especially if you're playing a character that comes from a culture. Like, let's say you're playing a halfling, right? And you come up with stories as to, like, stories that maybe your grandpap told as to why you might know these things. Or you're playing a dwarf and you say, I remember when the trolls attacked Golgaren, right? And, like, you know, knowing these stories that kind of feed into it. Or if you're playing in a setting like the Forgotten Realms, right? There's a rich history of stuff in the Forgotten Realms that if you know that lore and you're playing in any of the official modules in the Forgotten Realms, not hard for you to say, yeah, my character knows about the Troll War, which happened 100 years ago in Waterdeep, where trolls attacked the city en masse.
Yeah.
Now, did any of you know that? No, but I knew that. And so when I bring up why my character knows how to beat trolls, maybe that could be my reasoning for it. Now, if my DM it doesn't like that I'm just doing that, I respect my DM's wishes, right? I'm not going to be like a dick about it.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. I had an instance of that other day where we were talking about fighting giants, and I was like, I mean, Pete, know every type of giant, everything that they do, all of the ordning, and like all of the lore of giants, but I just went ahead and asked the question, because my character's backstory was that they were from the Feywild, and I was like, I bet you like hill giants that roam around the Feywild and stuff and eat little kids. So I said, I just asked my DM, hey, I think I might know about this because of my backstory. What do you think about that, and how does that play into the context of your story? I just literally just went ahead, like, do you think that's okay? And they were like, no, make a check. I want you to make a roll for it, and I'll let you do it. And I did, and that was that. You can literally just very openly ask, can I know a thing that I want to know?
I would go along those lines to almost always go in that direction, right? Like if you're gonna do something, if you're going to invoke this kind of meta knowledge, have that conversation. It takes 3 minutes to say at the table, hey guys, so like I as a player know some stuff about trolls, and I have some ideas as to why my character might know this information about trolls. Is that like might know some information about trolls? Can I like use this meta knowledge and can we talk about this? Or do you think, Dungeon Master, that like maybe I need to roll a check or proffer some things, right? Some suggestions. And then the big thing is when you ask a question like that, you got to accept what the answer is, right? You can't ask it, and then if they say, well, no, I think you got to roll, and then you roll poorly, and then you're like, well, but I know that, right? That's like, yeah. And especially when you're talking about monster vulnerabilities or anything, the DM's fully within their rights to be like, yeah, I changed this troll's vulnerability to thunder because that's what I wanted. Trolls vulnerable to thunder in this world. That's within a DM's right to do that.
Yeah. So that's that. Great question.
The Forgotten One asks another great question. Where did Andolsh's knees go?
It's canon. Next question. What's an example from other media that would be a good example representation of force damage? This is maybe, it sounds obvious, but I think the Force in Star Wars is a great representation of force damage to me. Specifically, not like force lightning or anything, because it's obviously you're using the Force to create lightning damage, but things like force choke, which is you're closing their windpipe, but I kind of think of that as they're just applying force damage to the windpipe. Is kind of my thinking on that. Also, like a force push, I guess you could argue it's just bludgeoning damage because it's physical, but I think kind of a force in that way.
Yeah, there's a strange point to consider between what is magical bludgeoning damage and what is force damage, right? And it's a weird, pardon me, it's a weird kind of line to kind of draw to think about. I'm sure that in the Dungeon Master's Guide, right, there are probably a definition of each damage type and what they do, and maybe it's in the monster manual even, where they describe like, oh, this is what force is, this is what that is, blah 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 blah. But I think what Pete said is as fine enough of a description as any.
Farfel saying just the furthest from what you think of for force damage. To that I say, I don't know.
Shrug emoji.
I don't know. Does pineapple pizza exist in the lands of D&D time? Asks the Sassmaster after. Would Bartholomew like pineapple pizza, and would Roger like it? I can tell you this. Bartholomew's thoughts on pineapple... yes, it absolutely does exist in the land of D&D time. Bartholomew's thoughts on pineapple pizza are...
Roger loves pineapple pizza.
He would.
I don't, but Roger does.
Sassmaster Money asks... so the same question about how to regulate what a character knows, but from the DM perspective, as you were the DM, and we're somehow regulating what a character knows. What if, for example, the quest to find a lich and use the DM require a check, And what happens if they failed that check? Does that mean the adventure ends because no one knows what it is they are looking for? No. It just means that I guess the question is like,
the key is not to take a dungeon master not giving you knowledge in like the cynical sense, because that's just interpreting it in the most cynical way possible. Be like, oh,
Yeah.
well, the mission's over because I didn't get my knowledge. It's like throwing a tantrum because the DM didn't give you the candy you wanted.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you don't know what it is, then obviously it's also like kind of, you know that there's something and you just don't know in character what that is. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, what happens when a character doesn't, when you as a person don't know something? You know, you go online, you Google it, you search for it, you try and learn. And that's maybe something a character does. Maybe that's, you decide, like, all right, next time we're in the city, I'm going to use my downtime to do research, right? Or next time I'm, I'm talking to this great wizard NPC we know, be like, hey, we heard about this undead creature that is haunting this tomb, that is apparently capable of creating their own undead minions and wielding great powerful magics. What do you know about this, right? Like, and maybe that's something that Dungeon Master wants, like is excited to share. That's kind of how I would look at it. I wouldn't take it in that more nihilistic direction.
In the same vein, it's like, you don't know that it's a lich, but you do know that something is bringing skeletons and zombies to the local town, and you don't like think, well, this is nothing just because you don't know what a lich is. These things must have just appeared here. I don't think any dungeon master
something's creating skeletons and zombies.
Will have there's no dungeon master I can imagine that would have a issue with you making a logical conclusion. There's a reason that this is happening, even if I don't know what that reason is. That's just basic.
Cool.
That's playing the game.
And by the way, I did find it. It's in the player's handbook where we talk about what damage types are. Force is pure magical energy focused into a damaging form. Most effects that deal force damage are spells, including magic, missile, and spiritual weapon.
So they don't know either.
Yeah.
Sassmaster after is asking a question right now, and we'll say that that's the last one that we're going to do tonight. There's one here from Maxmeister. Since I have such an affinity with creature companions in D&D time, if you could have any single fantasy creature companion, what would it be and why? Barring huge creatures like dragons, of course, the answer is a giant boar. Jeremy?
Oh, mine would not be a giant boar.
I mean, if I could have anything in like of ultimate power, and like I could have like a god at my side, I would want probably a giant boar.
You're sticking with a giant boar.
I like them. I think they're very cool. And I think that they're the kind of thing that's like, it just seems like I just always wanted a giant boar as a familiar.
Flying snake. I love the flying snake.
That's a good pick too.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
I don't know.
I guess like if it's like my buddy, maybe like a coatl, because that's like even cooler.
Yeah,
than
well, if I
a regular
could,
flying snake.
But
if it's a pet, it'll be a flying snake. No, not an owlbear. I love owlbears, but I wouldn't want an owlbear living in my house. It would kill me someday and eat me.
And like I feel like creature companion implies something pet-like. My favorite creature is a Rakshasa, but I wouldn't want a buddy Rakshasa.
I kind of would though. That's the kind of guy you want to be your bud.
I want a friend that's a Rakshasa, but that's not like a companion guy. That's not like he goes around with you all the time. It's like I go in the store and he doesn't steal my soul.
Buddy, just kicking people in the shins for you.
I do want a Rakshasa buddy for my buddy cop, Pete and the Cat, that I've been putting together. G Forgotten One asks, would you like a murder dolly to visit Central City, or would you prefer a collection? I prefer none. As it says in the flavor text of that ability, when asked if you could, would you like to confront a murder dolly, you should say no, and I will take the advice that you gave us, Frog.
Amen to that. And after his final question, what are some of your favorite obscure works of fiction that you draw inspiration from? Oh, man.
Oh, I don't want to tell you that because then you'll know that I'm ripping off all my shit.
I'm going to tell you right now, mine's not really that obscure, but for me, it feels obscure. I don't read as much as I'd like, but I really like Brandon Sanderson as an author. I think he writes some really great stuff. And one of his short stories called The Sixth of Dusk is a really, really cool short story. Yeah, I know, Farfel, I'm about to say. It's a really cool short story that even among, he's a popular author, but he's not a. I don't know. I feel like that story is not a commonly known work of his, but it's a really cool thing about birds that can like sense, basically like the barbarian's danger sense, but like the bird has it, and you're like attuned to the bird companion. It's just very cool. It's got some really cool themes to it that I really like. That could be really cool for games.
I would say for me, for D&D time specifically, if I'm talking about the games that you see, like me and Jeremy mostly run, which is D&D time games, I am extremely heavily influenced by Adventure Time, which isn't necessarily obscure, but you can probably see, if you've ever watched Adventure Time and you heard me say that, you immediately thought, yeah, of course.
The After agrees the Adventure Time.
Yeah, I mean, I love that show. Something actually obscure that I've pulled from and that really isn't informed like how I think about fantasy worlds is a story. I think I've actually talked about it in a question here like more than once before. I'll do it again. And it's this book series called Abarat by Clive Barker. It's a fantasy book series with really awesome pictures. The art in it's incredible. I've loved it since I was a kid. And I don't know how well it holds up from when I was a kid, but still a lot of the ideas in there resonate with me. Books 1 and 2 are amazing. Book 3 is kind of bad.
That's always a struggle when the third one's just like, oh.
Well, it came out like 8 years after the first couple, so I feel like I forgot what was good about his story. But that's aside the point. That's all for tonight.
Yeah, thank you everybody for hanging out this evening. We love you guys very much. If you want to catch more D&D time, we are on every Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we run 3 one-shot adventures featuring you, our viewers. Additionally, next weekend we got something special coming up. There's no Fantasy Labs. Pete, what is there?
And before I answer that, I want to mention one more obscure reference that heavily inspires, and Jeremy, it inspires you too. I know this is true. And that is a podcast me and Jeremy both like called Hello from the Magic Tavern. I just got excited thinking about it, or I'm wanting to recommend it, because I just want more people to listen to that podcast so I can talk about it with some people. Mm-hmm. You guys should listen to Hello from the Magic Tavern. I fucking adore that podcast. Farful listens to it.
It is very good. Pete, I actually need to roll, so we're gonna have to take off for now.
Like immediately?
Yeah, I gotta go.
Thank you all so much for watching. Tune into Pete and Jeremy's D&D time on Friday. Wednesday night, there's a lot of talk about us streaming. We are not doing that.
Yeah, not streaming on Wednesday.
We're not streaming on Wednesday. Don't expect anything on that day. There'll be a one-shot next week instead of Fantasy Labs. I'm Pete.
I'm Jeremy.
This is Jeremy's D&D time.
Yeah, that one. Goodbye, everyone.
Hello from Magic Tavern. Ask me in the Hangout.
Pete, put a link in the chat.
Okay.